All right. So again, welcome to our Community Innovation Fund info session. My name is Zara. I'm Rethink. I use she, her pronouns, and I manage the Rethink Waste project. And we're really excited this year to be expanding the Community Innovation Fund and offering some more resources, not just funding, but also some capacity for technical assistance to build application, and also develop some tracking measures and things like that. So I thought we could start by just doing quick intros of folks that are in the room in case there's opportunity to connect beyond this info session, or if maybe some project ideas you all have, like intersect. I thought that might be a good way to get folks introduced. So you all know me now. Do you want to go this direction?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Abigail Gusby. I'm the Community Food Access Coordinator at High Desert Farm Alliance. Excited to be here. Everyone, I'm the business manager here at the Environmental Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Kavi Choksi, and I am the Rethink Waste Program Coordinator. So I'm working part-time to help with outreach for the community.
Can we pass it over to folks in Zoom world? Ruby, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm Ruby Buckles. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Oregon Community Foundation.
Thanks. Suzette? Oh, you're on mute, Suzette.
Oh gosh, I'm Suzette Chapman. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Neighbor Impact, and I'm attending remotely. I have a very poor internet connection, so it's probably best that I turn off my camera so I can hear you guys clearly.
Sounds good. Thanks. Maddie?
Hey, I'm Maddie. I work for Worthy Garden Club, which is a nonprofit associated with Worthy Brewery. So I think maybe there's some potential just with waste coming from the kitchen, and then also just since so many people are going there to eat and drink to, yeah, maybe come up with a project. So I'm excited to learn more.
Sounds great. Well, thanks y'all for being here. So we don't have like a big presentation today. I wanted to give a bit of an outline of the opportunity and then really open it up more for questions from you all, and run it that way. So I'll share my screen just so y'all can see the application guidelines, and I'll work kind of go down the list that way. Okay. Can you all see my screen over there? Okay. All right. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Community Innovation Fund, like I said, we've had the funding opportunity for the last 3 years. And in that time, we had about a $10,000 bucket of funding that was really split between Rethink Waste projects, and then, in the whole community, and then Rethink Waste projects related to schools. And this year, we were able to really expand that bucket of funding in partnership with Deschutes County Solid Waste and Visit Central Oregon to provide $40,000 of direct funding to projects. The way that we set this up for this year, in this new iteration of the Community Innovation Fund, is to award up to $5,000 per project. In the past, we had a $2,000 cap, so we're able to increase that cap a little bit. But we also want to note that no project is too small. Often we get projects that are just a couple $100. So for example, last year there was a composting project, and all they needed were buckets from Lowe's, right? And so that was just like $200. And also still had a really big impact with the waste they were able to divert. So We have a higher cap this year, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you can't apply for, a smaller project as well. Sorry. Okay. And, you know, we're expecting anywhere from 5 to 8 projects that we'll fund this year. Another big change that we have this year is that the opportunity is open year-round. And so what that means is we will be reviewing applications with the review team in April, in July, and in October. And we're really excited about this change because in the past, you know, we often get requests from the community for support, and we have to say, you know, hey, come back in like 10 months when the Community Innovation Fund is available or open. But now we can really make this opportunity available year-round to meet the community needs a bit more, in a bit more timely manner. So, you know, it's really open year-round, but if you're, you know, if you have an event or a project that you're trying to carry out at a certain time of the year, I would suggest applying for the cycle prior so that you can, we can make sure that we have enough time to review that application, and then also Vienna has enough time to get the checks out there to people to carry out your projects. So that's the timeline, and we're here at our first info session, and each of the following info sessions will be fairly similar. You know, folks might have different questions, but we'll cover the same info. So that is what our timeline looks like, and as far as who can apply, actually I'll pause here. Do y'all have any questions on the timeline before we move on to more of the eligibility elements? Okay, great.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a question. Okay, so a nonprofit could apply at a certain time during the year.
Yes.
But you have $40,000 to award for the entire year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if let's say every single one of us on this call applies,
Mhm.
could it happen that, okay, just theoretically you love all of our projects and we all receive a grant award of $5,000.
Mhm.
Then that means that people who apply later in the year would have a smaller pool to apply from, which reduces the number of potential grants awards you make later in the year. Do I have that right?
That's right, and like I mentioned, this is the first year that we're opening the opportunity year-round. So we've had this conversation with our review team about, you know, do we want to split that $40,000 throughout the year, you know, so that there's an even number of projects or dollars funded each cycle this year, or do we want to leave it open? And, you know, if there are really compelling applications in the first round, to be able to award all of those projects. So the decision was that we would leave that open and flexible when we review applications in April. So I don't think that I highly doubt that all of the funding will be awarded in April. I'll say that, but I think you're right in that fewer funds or less funds will be available in the October review cycle. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move back up to the eligibility. So all of the projects funded will be either in Deschutes County or largely impact Deschutes County and or its residents. And that's because significant funds are coming from the county, and so we want to make sure that we honor that funding. Another note about the bucket of $40,000 is that $15,000 of the $40,000 are set aside for projects that take place or largely impact visitor destinations. And many of these destinations are also destinations that local community members would benefit from. But with our partnership with Visit Central Oregon, that's how we have carved out that $15,000. So those destinations include visitor lodging properties, restaurants, eateries, parks, trails, nature areas, outfitters or activity companies, museums, galleries, and entertainment venues. There's also flexibility there, you know, if they could make the argument that they are a visitor destination, and we would evaluate that as well. And so, you know, that's in part to make sure that we understand the impact that visitation has in terms of waste generation, and really wanting to set visitors up for success to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And so kind of coming back to that piece, the real intention here is to generate projects and impacts that reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost here in Deschutes County. And those are the kinds of projects that we are looking to fund. And projects can be brand new, or they can also be sort of expansions on existing efforts that you all have been working on. We're really looking for things that are interesting and different. I mean, they might be something that already exists in the community, but you're putting a different spin on it. And that's kind of where the innovation piece comes in. We're also looking to hear about projects that are registrable. And a big part of the intent of this project program is to really generate interest in other areas of the community to replicate the kinds of projects that y'all are wanting to sort of pilot or in your businesses or organizations. And then what else on eligibility? So we have a number of application cycles, but we're really looking for, you know, throughout the year that all of the projects awarded this year are completed by the end of the year, so December 30th, 2023. And so what that means for projects that are awarded in October is that you have a much shorter time to actually implement your project. That's also something the review team is looking at. And in the past, we have had projects that are fairly straightforward to turn around, right? So for example, if you're ordering a dishware kit, a reusable dishware kit, for folks at your organization, right? That's something that we've seen turn around fairly quickly, right? Like right when the funds are awarded, they're able to order that dishware and then start using it as soon as they get the dishware. So the reason that we're leaving that flexibility is we wanted folks to be able to apply towards the end of the year if there was a need, and if they were able to complete that project in that time frame, because we do know that it's possible. So just wanted to make sure you know that all projects are to be completed by the end of the year. Any questions on the eligibility before we move on to sharing a couple ideas or areas of what can be funded? All right, so ideas of what can be funded. So the part I want to start with is actually this last bullet point, that it's open for, you can apply for funding for incentives, stipends, or wages for community members or staff to implement the project. That's a pretty big piece that about half the projects in the past have utilized the staff time component, because we know that, you know, a lot of organizations don't have a sustainability person, and we want to be able to build capacity in those organizations to carry out a project that maybe doesn't cost very much in terms of supplies, but also, you know, there's staff time or it takes people to carry out that. We are able to fund that, but also, you know, materials or infrastructure related to waste diversion, compost tumblers or recycling bins. We also have a heavy emphasis on reusable alternatives for in general, the reduce and reuse components of the waste hierarchy. So at Rethink Waste, we really look to that hierarchy of reduce, then reuse, then recycle and compost. And you know, depending on the applications that we get, we're really going to look at evaluating through that hierarchy or in that order. And that's because reduce and reuse is where we have the biggest impact, because we're not making waste in the first place to be recovered through recycling or composting. All right, any questions on what can be funded before I shift to looking over some components of the application? All right. So here we are in the application. A couple of things I wanted to highlight that are kind of new this year. So we're trying to capture locations of projects, in part because we want to make sure that we're getting funding throughout the Deschutes County, throughout the communities across Deschutes County. A fair bit of the projects in the past have been in Bend, and you know, there's certainly value in that, and we want to make sure that we're also reaching other areas of Deschutes County. There's a question here about the visitor destinations that I mentioned.
I have a question about the destination. Do you mind scrolling back up to that part on the application?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. One of the things I was thinking about is for sometimes like annual events. Like in Lapine, we have like Frontier Days on July 4th. And so would that be part of this? Because I don't see it necessarily as part of it, but it is kind of like it's an event. It's kind of like it brings people in from outside of the community. So would that still count?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would put an event like that under other visitor destination and then specify here that it's an event. And maybe describe sort of the visitation component that you expect from the event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the project details are where we're looking for a bulk of the information. So in this first section, we're looking for a brief description of the primary goals or results that you're hoping to accomplish by implementing the project. And then the next question, we're looking for specific activities or actions that you are going to be taking that relate to those goals and results. We're also looking for a timeline here, and you know that can be really really pretty general. So the rough like season, like, this is what we're doing in spring, and this is what we're going to be doing in the fall, or we have month by month, but we're not really looking for specific dates. And that can really apply to like a bigger bucket of activities. There. We also have a template that you can download. It's kind of clunky the way we had to add it in here because you can add links, but you could copy this PDF link or the doc link and it will take you there. Show you. Yeah. And so it's a really simple outline. But you can also just bullet out your timeline here. Yeah. And then another big component that we want folks to consider is, does this project include components that meet the needs and includes the voices of individuals who are most often impacted by environmental degradation and climate change, including Black, Indigenous, and people of color, those people who are LGBT+, people with diverse disabilities, people and families with low incomes. And we're asking, you know, if the answer to that question is yes, if you could describe how you are carrying out or centering these components in your project. We also have a link here to the Environmental Center's commitment to equity, so you can learn a little bit more about why that's important to this organization and to our community. Another component here is that we want to hear if there are coworkers or other organizations or volunteers that you'll collaborate with to complete the project activities, and we're asking that you list those collaborators here, and if those are secured commitments or how you plan to get there. This piece is important for us because especially in the waste realm, we know that there can be a lot of different players in making a project happen and be successful. So in the past, you know, we've occasionally seen folks in the marketing department really want to put out signage about recycling right. But they haven't really talked to maintenance folks who are, you know, carrying out that work. And so sometimes those projects have some barriers later on. So we want to make sure that folks are thinking about those kinds of things and making sure that you have a full team put together, or at least that you're thinking about who else needs to be involved to make your project successful. The next question here on how much funding are you requesting? We're just trying to capture that number here. And then there's a note here about the 20% of project funds coming from matching funds. And that can be cash or in kind. This 20% match is a newer component this year. Some of the funding partners really wanted to see a bit more buy-in from the project applicants and the awarded projects to make sure that we, you know, have some buy-in and really can see project completion. And you know, to dive into that capture in kind component. So it could be from another grant, it could be funding from the organization or a, you know, a donation. As far as in kind, we're really open and flexible to that. So that could be staff time going into the project. If there's other equipment or supplies that you are putting towards the project, you know, what does that equate to in terms of funding? That's what we want to see down below here in the matching funds. And this isn't meant to be like a barrier for folks. We just really want to see that there's other investment or that you're thinking about all the pieces that need to make the project a success. And if you're not reaching that 20%, definitely reach out and we can talk about, you know, some ways to get around that. But we at least want you to be thinking about what other elements are important to make the project successful. Again, there is another template here. If you'd like to use the budget template, you don't have to, you can outline the budget here instead. Any questions about the components so far before I move on to the other pieces below? All right, and then I think this is the final question. So the final questions here, you know, will future funding or other support be necessary to sustain the project goals? If yes, what is your plan to secure additional funding or other support? And if no, how will you sustain project success? You know, we're really open to pilot projects. Like if this is a one-time thing, that is okay, but we also want to see, you know, if it is a one-time thing, what are your lessons learned? Or, you know, what kind of like guide for other community members to potentially replicate, or for other folks at your organization to replicate. So you know, it can be a one-time thing, but we also want to see like, what are you learning from that, or how are you applying that to a different project? And so that's really what this section is about. See if you're thinking past that December 30th end of the project date about the results that you're accomplishing. And then there's something funny here with the website where you have to like hover over the submit button, but there it is. You should also be able to save if you want to start on the application and then come back to it. You can save it here and then come back to your application as well. You can also download on our website. So this is, if you go to rethinkwasteproject.org, you can get there from the Environmental Center website. You can get there from the CIF button. And this is the application we were looking at here. You can also scroll down and download the application materials. Our preference is the application comes through that online form, but it's not gonna affect the likelihood of you, if you submit a paper application. We're also open to a video or other format, if you wanna submit your application that way, as long as it covers the information that's listed in the application questions. You can email that to us or drop it off here at the Environmental Center. But if you wanted to get, just download the questions ahead of time, you can do that. Oops, not there. Here under the guidelines, it's the guidelines in the application preview. That's what we're looking at. All right. Well, that's all I wanted to get out there to you all. Is there anything else, Yanette, or Kavya, but anything that would be important for folks to know? Otherwise, I'll open it up to some questions.
I think just the point that you touched on earlier about sort of the cycles and when you're kind of contemplating putting this project off the ground, and just keeping in mind that the reason why we set up these sort of quarterly cycles is to allow us internally enough time to go through the applications. The committee will review and approve, and then it transfers over to essentially the business manager or the financial people to get invoices and things ready to prepare for the awards to go out. And so there's a little bit of like a lag in that process. So again, if you're thinking about maybe a summer project, maybe get in on the first application cycle, or if it's a fall project, maybe get in on the summer application cycle so that you're giving us enough time to fund you and allow you enough time to complete these projects timely.
Yes, ma'am. I'm open to any questions that you all have. We've gotten a couple questions already, and I kind of covered those, but one was around the cash or in kind, like what does that mean? So if you have any other questions about that, I'm happy to dive into that. The other question was around whether projects have to be brand new. I think the innovation piece got folks thinking about that, but they don't have to be brand new ideas. They can totally be, we want to see if folks are like trying new things, but also if you're trying something different about an existing project, or you want to expand an existing project, that's also welcome.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, so if we were to be awarded funds, is the environmental center involved afterwards? Like if we started a project and it wasn't going how we planned or something, could you guys offer support and new ideas, or yeah?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. So part of this expansion of the new iteration of the Community Innovation Fund is to allow for that. So I have capacity, to be able to support the projects and troubleshoot as needed. We found that in the last 3 years, that was a piece that was missing, and we wanted to be able to provide that more robust support. And we want to make sure that the projects are successful. So yeah, we're not just gonna throw money at you and leave. We'll be around, and you can call me, or we'll email and figure out solutions. And we tried that with a few projects last year, and we found that was really a valuable component to be able to walk through some solutions. Another piece to that is, we had the Community Innovation Fund for about 3 years. In parallel, the Rethink Waste project has also piloted our very own projects related to multifamily housing, related to food waste reduction and composting, related to lodging sites in the tourism industry. And so we have some sort of best practices, guides and signage, things like that, that can really help sites as well, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if you feel like, if you have questions about implementing or carrying out your project, definitely help answer those questions. We can also answer some questions and kind of help you figure out how to best track some of the things that you're trying to track related to, reduce reuse and recycling or composting as well. So we have some experience in that. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect.
Cubby, were you gonna add something?
I was gonna add something in the sense that I know it's something we're still working on, or I'll be working on, is showcasing some of our past projects, but I feel like I'm putting myself in people's shoes, I feel like that might be helpful, because maybe we already covered some examples, but might give an idea of the wide range of projects since for.
So those aren't available on your website
I
right
think
now?
we have like,
It's in progress. That's part of my Cubby's here now.
and I forgot to mention, I just joined 3 weeks ago, so I'm fairly new to this, I'm really excited to help us support this program.
Yeah, so part of what I want to be able to do is get better at the storytelling around these like really successful projects that are happening throughout our community. We know there's a lot of doom and gloom in the waste realm. So kind of getting those good stories out there. So right now what we started to do is put together this map on the CIF webpage that also tells a little bit of a story around like what the project looked like, or what was done. Our goal with this is to create like a visual database where potential applicants can look and see like, hey, has this been done before? Maybe there's something I can learn from. And our goal is to include best practices or lessons learned from those past projects. And if those applicants are willing to put their contact information so that you can also talk to your peers and other community members about what went well and improve the, allow you all to build on successful projects rather than like creating brand new again and again. So that's an important component we're looking to add throughout this year.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, because I'd love to see if you funded like food waste projects and what that looks like. So that would be helpful.
Great, that's good to know that that would also be helpful. Any other questions?
And are you the best person to email if you have any questions?
Yeah, so we can help fill out the application if you have any questions as you work on it. Yeah. Yeah, so anytime you can email me at udara@envirocenter.org. I'll be sure to get back to you about the application process, or if you want to brainstorm some project ideas, if you have an idea, like we want our compost, but we don't know like what would be required, or what kind of things to consider, then we can definitely talk through some of those project ideas so that you have a sense of you have some direction too. But also if you have a project and you're like, this is what I want to do and I'm gonna do it, then you can fill out the application and we'll take a look at it in April in the first review cycle. So it doesn't really have to like come through us for project building either. That's just if you want some ideas to provide that. Yeah, thank you. Great. Well, if there are any other questions, like I said, feel free to reach out. If you are looking for, if you have ideas for sort of like visual database, I think that'll be helpful for Cubby too, is he works on building that out.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.
Awesome.
Have you ever worked with ArcGIS story maps?